Hello, everyone, and welcome to Gaming News. This week, I decided to separate the videos that I would be doing on Patreon to include specific topics that I wanted to go more in detail about, and then keep my regular gaming news video as a multitude of different things that have occurred during the week to discuss in brief in one video that is typically about a half an hour long. However, this particular topic is more nuanced and has been going on for quite some time, or at least some of the things leading up to this have been going on for quite some time, and I wanted to share with some of you the ideas that I've noticed over the last couple of years regarding the topic of Activision Blizzard. And it's not necessarily good, but I'm also not necessarily going to completely throw every employee under the bus, because I don't feel like that contributes to anything related to the topic. There are some amazing people that do and have worked for Activision Blizzard. Some of these people I have encountered through Twitch streams and other social media platforms, and on the whole, there are plenty of employees that are extremely good people and do not deserve the treatment that they've been subjected to. And then there's others in the company that should obviously be fired, and things really do need to change. So, I'm going to rewind a little bit to lead up to this week and all of the news surrounding the lawsuit on Activision Blizzard. Most people may recall a number of different things. People might recall the fabled "you all have phones, right?" And what happened there was a lot of people were extremely hyped up about a potential Diablo announcement. And at the time slot that there was going to be a major announcement by Blizzard, people were expecting something amazing to come out of BlizzCon that particular year, because previous years, that spot, that time slot at BlizzCon announced some of the biggest things that Blizzard brought out, and some very beloved franchises by many people. And the expectation that there was going to be a massive announcement for that time slot that particular year was so great that when Blizzard announced a Diablo mobile game, the fans were furious, the press was furious, and a lot of people just did not want to give Activision Blizzard the time of day. And I mean, to some degree, that made a lot of sense that they would be incredibly upset. At some point later, there was a Hearthstone tournament, I believe it was. Maybe it was an Overwatch tournament. I can't remember which esport it was, but there were shoutcasters who wanted to give a message to the audience because of a variety of different situations, and it led to the two shoutcasters allowing a pro player to say in his interview, "Free Hong Kong," and the shoutcasters promptly ducked and hid under their desk, knowing that that could potentially get them in trouble. And what happened after that was the player was barred from any tournament and basically robbed not only of his winnings for that tournament, but also for some of the tournaments going back from 6 months to a year worth of money that he had earned through various different tournaments. Not because of any cheating allegations or anything, but because of free speech and using the platform of the esport that he was a pro player for to speak against the political regime in Hong Kong at the time. And that was also met with a ton of criticism. The shoutcasters were also subsequently fired from that event as well, because the reasoning was that they were complicit in allowing the pro player to speak his mind, stating that they knew about what the message was going to be, and that they also were not allowed by Blizzard rules to speak about political issues on a live broadcast, especially on a tournament stream broadcast. And as I said, it was met with a lot of controversy, and once again, people held up their pitchforks and said, we are going to boycott Activision Blizzard. After all of that, of course, we had a number of layoffs that happened that was very widely publicized across gaming news. We also had a ton of media surrounding Bobby Kotick and how he continues to make billions of dollars a year for things he hasn't done, for requirements that he has not fulfilled according to his contract. Some of those things we have covered on gaming news previously. They can definitely be found. If you are part of Patreon, you can definitely go see some of those news videos where we've covered those topics. And not only that, but I have previously written about the issue with Bobby Kotick because of everything regarding all of that. So in 2019, I wrote a Jaggy's Corner on Chal Gears, where I was talking about the layoffs and about the fact that Mike Morhaime stepped down as CEO of Blizzard. This was the time when Jalen Brack became the new CEO. He had been working for the company for more than 10 years and had a very good handle on the direction that the company was to take from that point forward. But to me, it symbolized the fact that things were changing, and sometimes when there's a shuffle like this in any company, sometimes that ends up being extremely good for the consumers, and sometimes that ends up being extremely bad for the consumers. And this will become important for other reasons. Anyways, the Diablo Immortals announcement is the you all have phones, right? Which spawned this whole thing that people continue to tout on the fact that mobile gaming is not at the same level as PC gaming or console gaming, which is a whole separate issue in itself. But this just goes to show things like the bigger, larger, quote-unquote gaming community just does not have as much respect for mobile gaming as they do for other forms of gaming, and that's very unfortunate, because there is an argument to be made about how the marketing changes depending on what type of game you are creating. Anyways, after BlizzCon, it was announced by several gaming sites that the whole leadership of Activision Blizzard completely changed. So Bobby Kotick had taken over for the CEO of Activision Blizzard. Rob Kostic was to be the president of Activision. Dennis Durkin was going to be in charge of emerging businesses division in esports, and Humam Sakhinini to head up the Candy Crush division. And a lot of people at the time, for a multitude of reasons, decided to go along with the hashtag Fire Bobby Kotick. And there were a number of different articles that I cite in here, and a number of different YouTube videos about it. And I decided to make an argument about firing Bobby Kotick is not actually going to fix the issues with the gaming industry when it comes to unfair payment practices, when it comes to harassment, when it comes to diversity in staff and in storytelling and in basically every aspect. And I work with a couple of different articles about Bobby Kotick, a couple of them from Ars Technica. There's one from Kotaku, which was talking about when Blizzard got rid of a ton of employees from the World of Warcraft dev team. And of course, Jim Stephanie Sterling released a video about how scummy big name corporations can be, like EA and Activision. And it is definitely worthwhile to check out some of these videos for whatever side of the fence. It doesn't have to be this specific video or these specific articles. You can find a wealth of information online about Activision Blizzard that is quite thoughtful and good to look at. So, I talked about how I know that it's frustrating, and I know that Bobby Kotick is not a very good person because he is clearly focused more on profits than he is on anything else, and doesn't want to protect the team or the company necessarily that he works for. And I sat there and said, even if you fire him, there's still a ton of people that still have the mentality that they should be paid more, that certain behaviors are okay, etc., so on and so forth. So then we come to earlier this week. And earlier this week, there was an article released, which is this: Activision Blizzard sued over frat boy culture and harassment. And this talks about how the California Department of Fair Employment and Housing has filed a lawsuit against Activision Blizzard because of their culture and how female employees are subjected to harassment. They have a very imbalance in terms of pay equity and retaliation against speaking up against various members of the company. Now, I'm not going to talk specifically about the cases of people, of women who have come forward to share their story, even in short form, because I do not want to set listeners and viewers off from the video. I want to show other aspects of the documentation that are also extremely important, that in the first several articles and things that I saw releasing at the time were not focused on the same things. So, as part of the legal document, which is linked in the article that I just showed, I want to alert you to a sentence or two here, which is, there is a gentleman, Alex Afrasiabi, who is the former senior creative director of World of Warcraft at Blizzard, was permitted to engage in blatant sexual harassment with little to no repercussions. So after certain things regarding what he did, Afrasiabi would also call females derogatory names at company events. His conduct was known to Blizzard Entertainment's executives, who took no effective remedial measures. J. Allen Brack, president of Blizzard Entertainment, allegedly had multiple conversations with him about his drinking and that he had been too friendly towards female employees at company events, but gave him a slap on the wrist, which was verbal counseling, in response to these incidents. Subsequently, he continued to make unwanted advances towards female employees, including grabbing their hands and inviting them to his hotel room and other such awful behaviors. Now, there is obviously a lot more to this where they break down a variety of different things like the pay discrepancy, the notices, the laws surrounding what is required for a company. And there is another bit of information out of this that I also want to shed some light on. After female employees engaged in protected activities such as complaining to human resources, defendants took adverse employment actions against female employees. Such adverse employment actions included, but was not limited to, denial of professional opportunities, negative performance reviews, forced transfers to less favorable units, constructive termination, and selection for reductions in forces and layoffs likely based on discriminatory criteria applied to formal and or informal evaluations of performance. Essentially, what that means is, in total, Activision Blizzard was breaking the law in many, many different ways. And when a lawsuit like this comes out where the state turns around and says, we are going to sue this company because of their bad practices and illegalities, that is huge. This was a 2-year ongoing investigation of all of the evidence that they could bring to court in order to enact this massive lawsuit against the company. And I have to say that it sucks. All of this actually just sucks. And the reasons for that are multitude. One, we'll start with the fact that I absolutely loved Diablo 1 and Diablo 2. And there was a point in time where Diablo 3 was passably okay after they released an expansion and fixed some things. I played StarCraft 1, and I did play a bit of Brood War, and it kicked me to the curb. I eventually went up to StarCraft 2 and enjoy playing that game. I was very much interested in Overwatch when that first came out. And I played World of Warcraft for 6.5 years. I also played Warcraft 1 and Warcraft 2. And sadly, I missed out on Warcraft 3, which also led to a remake that was very negatively received by the community as well. But I never experienced the glory of Warcraft 3, so I was never really big into Warcraft 3 Reforged. So when you consider that, yes, there is a little bit of bias here, it is sad to me because Blizzard Entertainment has had some of the best animations and cinematics you can think of. It dominated the MMO market for literally years and has opened the doors to a lot of extremely good things. But of course, every giant, every company comes to a point where they're going to be taken down by several bad apples. Now, this isn't to say that all of Blizzard needs to die in a fire. Their practices, their poor pay schemes, their inability to deal with harassment of their employees, all of that is egregious and needs to be fixed. But I don't believe that absolutely everybody at the company is at fault for this. There needs to be some kind of resolution to these issues, and it is showing that even though this is a extremely large AAA company, that they're not infallible. Just because you enjoy their games, boycotting their games doesn't necessarily change anything. It doesn't change people's behaviors. It will make people aware of how deep or not deep their pockets are. But in the grand scheme of things, that does not change people's behaviors. And earlier today, I had a conversation with some people about a lot of journalists are talking about how a number of different things. One, a lot of them want to get the scoop and get stories from former employees or people who have been on the inside who may not want to tell their stories because they're traumatic stories and because they don't want to be re-triggered by those events that they've gone through. They have tried to move forward with their lives and tried to do a variety of different things, and many people have walked away from the gaming industry as a result of their poor treatment and for harassment and things that are much greater that, again, I'm not going to speak to, but you can understand the picture here. Part of that conversation was that we were talking about different potential solutions or things because, again, games journalists were jumping on the bandwagon for a number of different reasons, and a couple of them said this is the reason we need unions for video gaming. And I sat there and said, I don't disagree with the idea that unions will certainly help with our gaming industry. However, it is not going to change anything overnight, and it is certainly not going to work if people don't adopt the idea. And there also has to be certain guidelines. With an employment situation, if you have a union, it means you are generally paid by the company to fulfill whatever role, and you pay union dues in order to gain protections so that you're not wrongfully dismissed, so that you have access to lawyers should there be any kind of litigation. It allows you access to a variety of different things. I've never been part of a union, so I don't know specifics, but my understanding is these are things that are available to you when you are part of a union, but you pay for those services. And what it would do for the gaming industry as well, it could maybe mitigate some of the cost for legal representation if you are not given your winnings from a professional tournament, or if you've experienced some kind of harassment and you want to take the company to court, you'll have access to legal representation or something like that. However, these unions would then, at least for the gaming industry, would have to define who could be part of that union. Ideally, we would say all gamers need to be covered by this union. Now, does that mean all gamers who are PC gamers? Or does that mean only professional players? Does that include people who are just starting in animation and are maybe looking to get into their first internship? And then are we going to look at the definition of what a gamer is and who can pay these union dues? And then on top of that, what country would these unions begin in? Would each country have to have their own union to cover the legalities that would be present? And even at that, you're going to have to look at, in the United States, at state level. In Canada, you're going to have to look at province level, because provincial law and federal law are a completely different thing. Is it something that the UN is going to have to deal with, especially considering that the UN tends to deal more with refugee status, war situations? Where exactly do you start with that? How do you implement those things? Who would be covered under said union? And how long will it take for those kinds of things to be adopted? See, while I think that having unions for professional players in esports would be a good thing, it would be a good step, it will force the law to give protections to people who are sort of self-employed, essentially, especially if you're not represented by a team. These are all considerations, and there's no specific solution that is going to just fix all of these issues in one go. And it sucks to know that. It really does. And we also know that Activision Blizzard is not the only AAA company or even just gaming company that has had bad behavior and illegal practices being conducted. I have, for the other gaming news video that I will be doing, a whole article about a Twitch Rivals player cheating on stream and knowingly cheated, and very little was done to fix that issue. So this is not exclusive to Activision Blizzard. It's also not a thing that's going to be fixed overnight. And it's also regarding things that are very difficult for people to talk about. So people are outraged about this, and people are calling for a boycott against Activision Blizzard, and I completely understand their reasoning. However, I also know that that's not necessarily going to change anything. And that doesn't mean don't do it. That just means that we have an extremely long way to go when it comes to dealing with harassment in the workplace and fair pay. Even to this day, we are in 2021, and we had hoped that the gaming industry would move away from the atrocities of the regular world out there, where these things happen and are not really well publicized. But due to the fact that people are working from home, and due to the fact that people are stuck inside, people are no longer standing for egregious treatment any longer. And it's causing a huge sweep throughout the industry, which shows why all of these articles and why Activision Blizzard has become the forefront of the news this week. And what bothers me about it is, not only is it difficult to find a solution that will actually work, actually work. But knowing that it will take a lot of time before we get there, but also knowing that if in 2017 I was already arguing that firing Bobby Kotick was not going to change anything, shows that this has been happening for years and years and years, and how have people not seen it coming? I have seen way too many tweets in the last 24 hours of people saying, I am really shocked that this is what has been happening behind the scenes. And I often wonder if journalists failed to convey the information. I often wonder if these people have just ignored the information that's in front of them, or if these people are simply jumping on the bandwagon because everybody else is doing it right now and they don't understand the greatest issue. The worst thing about this is there are a ton of Blizzard fans who are gonna forget about this in a week's time, and they're going to be so hyped up about the Diablo 2 remake that they're going to pre-order that and snatch that up and basically allow the company to not fix their issues, and they're going to allow the lawsuits to do something to help out. I've also seen a bunch of other tweets of people going, boys will just be boys. And at what point do we finally get rid of the argument of, well, women have to be proper and do this, that, and the other thing, but men are allowed to do whatever the hell they want? I'm sorry, that does not sit right with me. So, when it comes to Activision Blizzard, I encourage you to speak out against the people who are harassers and make sure that something is done. What I'd like to say when I mean speak out against these people is please warn people you know who might be applying for these jobs. Warn them of the situation and community. Share the articles, the lawsuit about this thing. Just show people, show women that this is still actively happening, and not to work at these places to try and help not become targets of harassment and other extremely egregious behaviors, because this should not be done in any company regardless. Plenty of women in the industry that will talk with you about the situation privately. They don't necessarily want to publicize their experiences, and that is completely fine. But if you're looking to get into the gaming industry or something, I highly advise that you look up information and definitely research and talk to people before you start applying for different companies, because you don't know the culture or the history of a lot of people in there. And unfortunately, that is maybe the best advice I can give at this moment, but no amount of money is going to fix the problem. No amount of firing people is really going to fix the problem. It might take women banding together to make companies or start companies that will foster and raise women up instead of knocking them down and allowing behavior like the frat mentality to persist in the gaming industry. We need more women who are interested in gaming as a whole, and there are a ton of women who are in gaming professions that need to band together and talk to each other, because this has got to stop. And I don't know what else to say about that other than I am just disgusted right now. As much as we can talk about this is a bad situation, it's not going to get fixed overnight. And I need you guys to remember that there is a track record here that many of us have seen that I want you to be aware of so that you hopefully don't fall into the same trap. And that's all I've got for you today. If you are not subscribed on my Patreon, I do a gaming news video every Friday. I also have a writing tier where I'm editing my novel that is released every Wednesday. And if you're interested in talking with me, I will link my Discord and socials below so that we can start a conversation. And all I ask is that people are sensitive about the topic and that you're not disrespectful to people. I invite opinions, but I do not want hostility, just to preface that. So, thank you very much for watching, and hopefully I will see you in the next video. Have a great day.